Okay, so again, when we're stressed, the breathing rate increases. We go into these protective postures. We start to open our mouths. We mouth breathe. We're just trying to survive. So again, someone who is, doing pre-season conditioning, they're just trying to survive. They're not thinking about using the glutes or the TVAs. Okay, again, a very good study a little bit a few years ago now. Pablo Kolar, about 2012, I think this was. Again, it just showed the excursion of people in pain versus the people without pain. So again, people that don't have back pain, their diaphragm goes through a much greater range of motion versus the people who have back pain. Okay, so again, you can see the excursion of the diaphragm here. Again, instead of coming all the way down and all the way up, they're just going through a limited range of motion. Okay, so that's all that's shown. Okay, so again, something to consider here. So this was a player with a lot of sagittal plane muscle injuries, 3 muscle plane injuries in the same year. When we get him to check if his center of gravity is in between his base of support, if he's happy to tolerate load through his hips, we can see there's not a lot of movement variability here, a lot of reaction happening at the rib cage and the hips, which I'll talk about in coming videos. So rather than tolerating load at the hip, we had a look at his rib cage, and you can see once we get that rib cage moving, we'll get the reactions at the hip. Okay, so the torso is very important to get that subconscious feed forward to the glute medius and various other tissues. Okay, so again, it might be a weak glute medius, it might be just that the torso doesn't have the range, which is giving us the stimulus for the glute med to fire. And I'll show you some papers of that in a second. So when the rib cage elevates, what I want to show you here, you see when the rib cage elevates, it alters the length tension relationship of the hamstrings and the abdominals. When we can get that resting position, okay, or we can get the diaphragm to rest a little bit higher under the rib cage, then we can alter the length tension relationship of the hamstring. So a lot of people, when they have a protracted rib cage due to that diaphragm starting to tighten up, they'll also have tight hamstrings, okay, where again, the tissues will be lengthened, the skin, the fascias have to go and react as well because of the pelvic tilt reactions. And then presumably we get these receptors screaming at the brain going, hey, I'm being constantly stimulated. Rather than stretching the hamstrings and massaging, we're going to get retraction of the rib cage all to the pelvis and then just dampen down the communication from the receptors, presumably, okay? So as I said, muscles have an optimal length, they have an optimal rate of length change. They like to contract slowly. So again, just giving them that optimal length tension relationship, we have to be aware that what happens at the rib cage will impact the pelvis, will impact the peripheral tissues. Okay, so again, that's why it's very important with a lot of peripheral tissues. Here's the study I was on about, the influence of changes in trunk and pelvic posture on single leg standing on muscle activation. So again, when I go this way, it has a big impact on my ability to decelerate my glute med. If I go this way, the adductor. If I go this way, the quad. If I go forward, hamstrings and hips. So we need movement through the torso in order to stimulate the peripheral tissues, okay? And this is real world.